This is a picture on my refrigerator that I just took half an hour before this talk. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. They wrote that in 1939. I came into S.L.A.A. absolutely broken, and it got worse before it got better. In S.L.A.A., I came to a point where I thought I was broken beyond repair and that I always would be unlovable. I always would be a failure. I always would be someone that if you could see me and you knew me, you would reject me. And that was the only requirement for membership of S.L.A.A. is a desire to stop living out a pattern of sex and love addiction. And in my case, S.L.A.A. had finally, after 20 years of 12-step, brought me to the absolute core of my addiction, and it was my lack of self-love. I realised, well, it's very easy to talk about the acting out, and it was pretty shocking, the acting out. You know, when I arrived in S.L.A.A., I had a lot of injuries. I have bottom-line sexual violence of all sorts. But as you can imagine, as someone who's a trauma survivor, it'd be very easy to be safe, and safe is fine. I'm not telling anyone else if they've got to a place where they feel safe and they're happy, that's wonderful. But for me, I wanted to go past putting down the acting out. And I talk about being on a pendulum. I wanted to go past, you know, extreme acting out. I didn't want to be an extreme acting in, even though it was perhaps emotionally and physically safe to be there. I wanted to come to some balance of capacity as a human being to take healthy risks, to take a risk on love, to take risks on being hurt. My core patterns that were holding me back or blocking me from the sunlight of the spirit was that I fear others and I use strategies to keep them at bay. I alternate intense and insane relationships with years without sex or a partner. So I'd gone 2 years, then met the father of my child, had a volatile relationship for a year, went another 3 years, then met my most recent husband. And I met him on a pretty seedy internet chat app, and he proposed on the 5th date and I said yes, and we were married within 12 months, and I thought that was fine. So there was no warning bells going off. And if I was just a complete newcomer, you'd say, oh, well, people do that. But I wasn't. I was 15 years in another fellowship, and the person I married was shared the same disease as me and was not in recovery, and I still didn't see a problem with it. So I clearly had a massive amount of denial. So I don't think I'm an anorexic, I think I'm a bulimic, because it's either high as a kite insane or I just can't touch it. I can't touch relationships, they're too dangerous for me. No safe, balanced middle. In partnership, I did find it very difficult to be emotionally close. I could have lots of acquaintances, so the assumption that anorexics are somehow shy or socially deficient is quite wrong. I could have plenty of acquaintances, but no one really close to me in or out of 12-step. So I can have, you know, 60 friends from AA on Facebook, but nobody who sees me and knows me, and hence nobody who can hurt me. I was using my 8-year-old child to meet all my emotional needs and keeping a careful distance from anyone else, just keeping up all those facades, those masks, sending in representatives, everything's fine, because you get to a certain length of time in a program, and if everything isn't fine, well, then maybe you aren't working your program properly. And I had a lot of shame around that. Things were not fine. Well, we'll get to it, but things were not fine. I felt overwhelmed. You can feel overwhelmed in social settings and dread making phone calls. The dreading making phone calls probably slowed me down in SLAA recovery, because I entered a fellowship where there was only one way, which was how, which I did do, and it did do a great job for me. But the phone calls caused a lot of pain and traumatization, re-traumatization for me. And I can be intensely sexual and social, but emotionally unavailable because I'm love avoidant. Why? Well, here's my step 4 in a nutshell. Fear of needing anybody else exposing me to harm. These are all trauma responses. You're unique. These are only mine. I had a fear of engulfment, being suffocated and completely losing myself, and yet I did. Scared of it, but it didn't stop it happening. A fear of intense feelings of any sort because of the my abusive childhood. I'm an adult survivor of extreme child abuse. Fear of being seen for myself, judged and rejected. That was in every encounter. That fear takes a huge amount of energy to carry that much fear around. Dropping that rock was amazing. Fear of my sexuality. I've been very, very confused as to why I'm not attracted to men. And just a lot of fear and shame around my whole sexual identity. I have a fear, terror in fact, and fascination with men and male sexuality. I like to, want from afar, but not let them too close because I'll be engulfed. And don't know why, but in my family, we are afraid of starting relationships, and then when we're in them, we won't leave them. We stay in bad relationships. A bad one-night stand can turn into a bad decade of bad marriage because somehow I'm too proud to say I made a bad choice. So I don't know why, but that's particular features. The causes are no different to most people's causes. Some fantastic research by S.L.A.A. a few years ago. We are the adult survivors, and this is not therapy. So if you recognize these things, you might, as I did, find therapy incredibly supportive as you work the program. Boundary violations, sexual shaming, emotional neglect and abuse. My needs were not met. I was put in a orphanage at 15 months for my own safety. My mother had mental illness through no fault of her own, and I wanted the cycle of abuse to stop and addiction to stop with me, but I did not know how. Sexual and or physical abuse, yes. Deprivation, yes. And loss of important people, absolutely. Whilst my family was chaotic, I sought refuge in the house next door with a little girl the same age as me, and I was fostered by those people for quite some time. But when I was 7, she was hit by a car and died. So I've had a trauma, and we all have. Nobody gets through life without any trauma, but what creates an anorectic? Well, here's some examples. The recovery journey for me, I know it's a little hard to see the slide, but it made me think about, well, if I'm going to talk about my journey, what would that look like? Recovery journey for me. So I got married to somebody because they proposed on the 5th date, and I thought that was a great idea because I wanted the idea of him, not him. I wanted the idea of happily ever after. Really had just no role models how to achieve that, but I thought, if I'm sexy enough, this will work. And I don't know where I got that idea, or I think I do. But funnily enough, it didn't work. So Christmas 2015, he left, and it was chaos. But I started working my substance program really, really hard, because that's what you do when you're in crisis. I got a good sponsor. I was working the meetings. I was standing up week after week, sobbing that my husband had left me. I was obsessing, and I think at one stage I calculated I was obsessing about him, having conversations with him in my head about how everything could be different, talking about him in meetings, talking about him with other members, talking about him with my sponsor, journaling about him. I love it when people say journaling works for them, but for me, journaling was just writing someone else's inventory for hours on end. And it was ruminating. It was just ruminating, which was making the obsession and the depression worse. I had an confused 8-year-old daughter asking what the hell's going on. One minute she had a stepfather, the only stepfather she'd ever known, and 2 sisters, and the next they're gone because he's met someone else. And she was looking to me, and in the midst of all of this, when I couldn't feel more sorry for myself, I got diagnosed with a very aggressive breast cancer. And so suddenly it wasn't all about me, it was about living. And that was my real rock bottom, because I'm still in a substance program. And now I've got cancer as well. And I've got no husband to sit with me and hold my hand and take me to treatment and all those things, because I'm a failure. That's what I really felt. I'm unlovable. I've been thrown away, and I'll die now. So that's my bottom. I hope yours was a bit nicer than that. And I was in an AA meeting, and this quite scary woman pulled me aside and she said, look, Celia, week after week I see you stand there and you're sobbing and you're talking about a man, okay? And there's a lot of girls here that are just trying to get sober and stop drinking, and you're 15 years sober and you're a mess. You need to go to S.L.A.A. or go to Al-Anon, go somewhere, because your problem isn't booze. And I thought, oh, how rude, you know, and how unsupportive. Doesn't everyone know I'm the center of the universe? And, you know, if you had my problems, you'd whinge like me. Anyway, so I thought, well, I don't like it, but I'll tell you what, older sober members, I'll do a lot of things that I don't really like because they do tend to work. I went along to S.L.A.A. I've got to tell you, I thought that it was a madhouse. It was so different to the program as I knew it. I want to talk about what did recovery look like for me. At first recovery, when I landed, I was a sobbing wreck. I was in step 1. I was waking up to all the characteristics. And for me, recovery was get another partner so I feel better ASAP. Another person will fix me. Saw that stuff about relating to people from a state of wholeness, and I thought, yeah, that's for you people that aren't completely damaged. I'm a mess. And I'm not going to, you know, it's all my parents' fault, and that's not going to happen for me. But the HOW program really worked for me. I couldn't do it in 30 days. Some of the questions really brought a lot up, and I needed to stop and get trauma counselling or grief counselling. I would ring people, they wouldn't answer, and I got to the point, or they would answer and it would leave me feeling worse, not better. So I got to the point where I tried ringing 3 times, and if 3 people chose not to answer me, well, at least I made the effort. I am forever grateful to the woman who took me through that, because gosh, she was patient with me. So by about January, I put down all my acting out, and I had got to a point where I had hope that by going past 1, 2, 3, I would be a sober person who could attract better partners. Then I went with my friend and recovery partner to the United States. She was going over there anyway because her son had got a basketball scholarship, and I said, I'll come too, and we can do lots of meetings in New York. We found there was an SLAA women's conference in upstate New York on the Hudson River, in a very, very beautiful place at the base of Bear Mountain. And we were able to walk in the Appalachians, and my higher power is connection with nature. And so for me, it was a really beautiful experience. But it was on that women's retreat, and I think there might be someone on this call who was there with me. It was on that retreat, I went to an anorexia meeting with no idea what it really was. I knew it was something like, you know, don't mistake it for recovery. That's all I knew. And we worked through this book, and I started crying because I was in the right place at the right time, and I just knew they were describing me, and that my answer was going to be self-love and gentleness and all the things that the anorexia program is. So came home from the States, absolutely inspired to work this new program, but there was no one here to do it with. I got in contact and got an American sponsor, and started working an anorexia program as best I could on my own, with 1 call a week to the States. And we started a meeting, and the rest is history. What did the anorexia steps do for me? Well, the steps combined with what I'll call the joy of service, I fell in love with my own life. You know, I finally, after all these years, realized what they were talking about in the big book when they said happy, joyous and free. I've been in lockdown for now 10 weeks in my own mostly on my own, in this little apartment, and I have never felt more surrounded by love. That's what I mean by happy, joyous and free. It's not stuff, it's not a person, I'm okay in my own skin because I did that 6, 7, 8, 9 to the best of my ability. I'm really proud of the effort I put in, and incredibly grateful to all the people who helped me along the way. Now I've got to a stage of doing 10, 11, 12 on a daily basis, embedding that in my life. So I'm not consciously saying, oh, damn, now I've got to do my 10th. It's really embedded new behaviors. And I love the 12th step of the anorexia program to share my abundant life with beloved persons. In and out of program, family, friends, dating a nice man, have a nice family. All the things I figured were pretty impossible for me have been delivered in a short 3 years. If you told me at the beginning it'll take 3 years, I probably, because I'm an addict, I want everything yesterday. I want everything to be easy as well. I probably would have given up. But that was my recovery journey. Now, me as an addict in one chart, I don't think I knew how hard it was going to be. So this is Pia Melody's work as it's been distilled by a particular rehab that's based on a rehab in the States called the Meadows. And the core issues as an anorexic for me were low self-esteem. So I had what they call in AA, the inflated ego masking the low self-esteem. I was less than or better than in every interaction. I wasn't just, I am who I am and you have the right to not care, it doesn't matter. I had, self-esteem, so I was crippled by things like the need for approval. Boundaries, had none. Overshared, undershared, abused people, just awful. Bad containment, so bad internal boundaries and just no external boundaries, disastrous really. And the journey of starting to put boundaries in place was very challenging. Reality, didn't want to live in reality. For the first year, I think it was mostly fantasy that my qualifier would come back. I did not want to live in reality. So I was either pretending to be perfect or I was acting out and pretending I was a rebel, but I was not real at all. Dependency and moderation. I was either out of control acting out or I was super controlling acting in and controlling of others. So really suffering on all those levels as an anorexic. And the presenting problems for me, yeah, this is a shopping list of me. Depression, dishonesty, rage, enmeshment, control, physically sick. Didn't help I had cancer, but I was also more tired than I needed to be. Intimacy issues, needless to say. Eating disorder, yes, most women in S.L.A.A. do. Money hoarding, anxiety, spiritual issues. What spirituality? Had none. I also, of course, had love and avoidance addiction. And now I work towards the list on the right, being a functional adult. Big shopping list of things to achieve. How do I do that? Originally, the recovery tools, sobriety, bottom line, the things you're doing that are self-destructive. Sponsorship, get a sponsor and be a sponsor. The SLAA program, the beauty of the program is it says as soon as you finish those first 30 days, you're ready to hold out the hand of fellowship to the next suffering person. And it's in sponsoring and in service that you begin that spiritual practice. I can't speak for everybody, but I think a lot of us don't have a solid sense of purpose, God, spirituality. But just doing the daily kindness of listening to somebody else is the first, I won't say step, I'll say giant leap. So there's a really good recovery tool in sponsorship, being a sponsor. And until then, I'd spent all those years not being a sponsor because, well, I'll just make them worse, not better. And I don't know how to be a sponsor. That's someone else's job. To step up and do it really mattered. Meetings, but not hiding in meetings. Very easy to go to a lot of meetings every time I feel lonely and not really sit in discomfort at all. Do the steps, service, spirituality I discovered for myself. The recovery tools in the anorexia program, very different. I pay careful attention to my emotions. I'm tender, I'm softer on myself. And as I soften on myself, I soften towards others. And it's been very noticeable. Going at my own pace. This was quite different to the HOW program. Going slowly and doing things so I could properly integrate the growth, the emotional, the trauma that came up and had to, and the processing of it and the growth, and just my speed doesn't matter, forward is forward. And in fact, it's a bit 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but that's okay. I never gave up. You could see me knocked down, but you'd never see me give up. And importantly, to follow my own higher power, be guided by my own higher power and not be misdirected by my own fear or the expectations of others. So I'm not working my program and my recovery to impress someone else. I'm absolutely doing it for the quality of my own life. My self-care, I stopped neglecting myself. I started to actually, I had to tackle these things one by one. I didn't just overnight figure this out. I had to start tackling, why do I eat rubbish, microwave some takeaway? Why don't I take the time to shop for healthy food and cook for myself? Because I didn't think I deserved it. Balance. I spent a whole year focused on balance in my life. Authenticity. So authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. Spirituality. My God is love. My program has given me the enormous privilege of being an instrument of God's healing love, sometimes in someone's life somewhere. And this gives me meaning and purpose beyond any other. Service. I went along to a SLAA annual business meeting because I was in the States anyway, and I heard somebody with recovery, a big jolly man, say, I give my time, talent and treasure because in gratitude, I give that back to S.L.A.A. because AA gave me a life, saved my life, but S.L.A.A. gave me a life worth living. And something about what he said, I thought, that's it. I've found my place. I've been pottering around the outside of 12-step. I don't know where I belong in life, but here's something I can do. I can donate my services, my time. I can donate some funds, and I can in that way quietly help others. And that's what I've committed to do. That's what I do. Friendship, investing in friends, sponsorship, being a sponsor. I've got 4 sponsees. I love them dearly. My suggestions, believe it or not, go at your own pace. It's easy to be overwhelmed. Anorexics can come to S.L.A.A. in desperate need, but be turned off by the intensity. Addicts who love intensity don't mind intensity, but anorexics do. So go at your own pace, go gently with yourself and others. Just focus on one area at a time. It's too much to try to do it all at once. Set up easy goals. My first goal was survive cancer. My second was finish grieving my heartbreaking divorce. The third was a happy, comfortable home. I set these goals. They were big. I gave myself 2 years. I'd reached them all within 12 months, and that was S.L.A.A. The support I found in S.L.A.A. was amazing. Be brave and unconventional. Your recovery, my recovery, is different to everyone else's. I only have my own story. I only have how what I've done, but I'm allowed to be different. It isn't a cookie cutter, there's the recovered people and the unrecovered rest. I'm not one of the unfortunate who will never recover. I'm just different because I came from a pretty hard, pretty difficult base, pretty low bottom. So being brave and unconventional and continuing to celebrate, recognizing the progress of recovery and the little actions that are taken here and there, like celebrating with friends. So here in Australia, we step up at our home group on steps 3, 5 and 12 to celebrate with our friends. I still have a long way to go, but I'm already so far from where I used to be. And I'm really proud of that. And I want to say thank you to everybody here because I could not have done it without my brothers and sisters.